Ulonka tabati yada tó yẹ kó máa da ifá. Inú tó yẹ kó jẹun lọ́ fi bí pa. Ọba tálá, ọba takuntakun. Shango, Èṣù, Ogun, Ọya, Ọ̀ṣun. Ìwọ ló ń bọ̀ nílé yìí. Kí ni ìṣẹ̀ṣe tán ṣe nílé yìí o? Ó jẹ́ lọ jára.
Alafia, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Welcome to another episode of the African Spirituality Experience. I am your host, Orisha Bami, and today we are joined by none other than Queen Asia Rainey and Baba Korega. Lafia, Bora Boya Boshishe, how y'all doing today? That's
doing
what's
well,
up.
brother. How about yourself?
I can't complain, man. I woke up, so everything else I can figure out. That's how I look at it.
I said,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, whew, yeah, this we got something.
Let me just say, I don't know if I ever fully heard the intro. I was like, what's the, I like
it's a
that.
jam.
Listen, no, I appreciate it. That's brother 100. Shout out to 100. He a Nigerian artist out of Nigeria doing his thing over there in Nigeria with the Shay. He makes the Shay music.
Yeah.
He does the Shay. Yeah, powerful artist, man. Phenomenal brother for sure. But speaking of powerful, today's topic in today's episode and show is based upon the process of freedom or about freedom, and I was just blown away by just a clip, just a small little sample of what I can only imagine with the people who are going to be blessed to see, the actual full unveiling of what freedom is. But for those who are going to be, eventually able to be blessed with being able to see this project unfold, before their eyes, can you kind of share, before we even get into what is freedom and what it's about? I always like to think about things from like the origin. So how was freedom created? Like, what was the initial spark of inspiration that was what I just saw? Like, how was that formed? And then how did that kind of morph into what I just saw in regards to this project?
To answer that question, I feel like I was about to say, well, back in 19, so as an artist, and I use that word now instead of saying one type of thing because we do a lot of stuff, right? But so as an artist, that's as a spoken word artist, performer, theater, film, music, just so many different things that over the years, coming from a place like New Orleans, that's just this big fat mecca of creative. This was right after Katrina, and the artists there, we were all on 10 when it came to, we know we need to give to the people because they need something to feel a sense of home, a sense of self, a sense of uplifting. All of these different emotions needed to be supported, and then we need to be supported. So we were pouring out, right? And this actually just started with a poem that was probably, if it's typical for me, scribbled on the back of a napkin one day. Um, and some of my poems turned into songs.
Mm.
I think I can sing. I'm one of those shower singers that can hold a tune. So I went and began to perform this at different places around town.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a very interesting reaction with people. That was energetic, Um, I think it brought us backward and forward at the same time. Backward in a sankopic way, forward in a hopeful way.
Mm.
And I knew that I wanted to keep developing it. Just at the time, this was quite some time ago. I wasn't sure how.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, um, I met this brother who we literally met where he was drumming on one side of a table at a conference, and I just walked up from the other and started to spit a poem.
Wow.
And that was in 2012.
Wow.
And from there, not too long after that, actually, we started working on different pieces of music. I believe Freedom was one of them at the time.
So,
Yeah.
very early iteration.
But keep in mind, back then, my confidence level had a lot of growing to do.
Hmm.
And he said, so did his. And then, just development of relationship. We were friends, and that was it. And we lived
Hmm.
in different states and so on. And so
Hmm.
over the years, it was something that, let's just say it was kind of on a shelf simply because it needed to be in
Hmm.
um, and then fast forward into like 2017, 18, 19, where we're now becoming more than friends, into relationship, into marriage. And we started pulling these projects from the shelves saying, what are we doing with them? Now, of course, he says his confidence level came up. It was, I think, him over the last decade refining his own sound and the way he produces music and so on and so on. And, so we're coming together with these two things. And I should say, even our ability to work together as two creative people, sometimes you put them in the same room and it's I got an idea. I got an idea. And that can either be a beautiful thing or it could be bump heads.
Hmm. Yep.
We have to learn how to work together.
I should.
You want to say anything about
You kind of said it all. I did. Um, Now, I do remember our first meeting a little bit differently than you, as these things tend to be. I was selling my jewelry, and you walked up with old girl, and then we started talking, and I said a poem, and you said a poem, and I was like, she can do poems. You were like, he can do poems, and then later on, with our dear sister, in the ancestral realm now, Levita, she was on the shaker ray, I was on the drums, and then she came up and started doing a poem. It was like, all right, yeah, yeah. And I mean, even back then, I was like, man, ooh.
Look, that's that yeah, yeah, answer energy.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
me.
sir.
the
That's
hilarious
what's up.
part? How about before we met, he saw me on a poster for
Mm.
a play that I'd done. He was checking me out then.
I was.
So anyway.
I was. I mean, the funny thing about Umila, you'll get glimpses of your future before you even know that that's what you're seeing.
I should.
And
Yes, sir.
what I remember when I first saw her in person, after having looked at her photo on that poster for that time,
Hmm.
I was like the first words, and I never will forget the first words that came across my mind, came across my ears. I can see it.
Mm.
That's interesting wording for that to be the phrase that comes across my mind. It's like,
Right.
yeah, I can see it. Not necessarily now, not necessarily the way I thought I was going to see it, but
Right.
some iteration of I that I wasn't even fully in touch with could
Mm.
see her. And
Mm.
now, in the fullness of time, I'm realizing what I was actually seeing when I
Mm.
could see it.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's powerful, man. And like even just that little bit right there, backstory, it resonates all throughout the film. I mean, all throughout everything that I saw, and even to the fact of this is your second time being on the podcast, and I remember when we were interviewed the first time, I remember asking the question because Baba being Shango and you being yeah, I'm like, man, that's a powerful, that's a lot of energy in one union. Like that's a lot of powerful energy in one unit. And like, how does that balance itself? Like, does it balance itself? Or, is there sometimes there's more of a surge of the Kabiesi energy or more of the yang? Like, how does that part work before I go further into the project? I'm just curious as to where we are now.
This first. All right, so I'll say yes and right. It's always a work in progress and always a refining that we
Mm.
do internally and we do with each other.
Mm.
That allows for us to have not only just a loving relationship, but a functional and working and creative relationship. This is what you saw and what you see here now. Um, Good Lord.
Mm.
It's certainly not, for lack of work. It's certainly not for lack of intentionality. We've
Mm.
had to be very intentional about developing our flow.
Mm.
And because I mean, you think about it, we came to each other, I guess if you want to judge it according to common standards later in our lives,
Mm.
right? We had
Mm.
all sorts of ways, all sorts of wounds, all sorts of scars, all sorts of pretenses that we came with that we had to kind of go back, unpack, reconsider, and then actualize in a way that was going to be useful for us, and by extension, useful for those who will be able to touch.
So then you imagine that the average couple
Yeah.
has to find its way of being, its way of communicating, all this stuff as a couple. Who gonna wash the
Right.
dishes? Who gonna pay the bills? Who gonna cut the grass? All that kind of stuff. And then you add another layer of both being artists and having that artistship. Yeah,
Yes.
we are very transparent people. It has not always been a picnic, right?
I can
Um,
imagine.
but at the same time, there's always been something beneath it, which speaks to the name of this film. It's that we saw a freedom in being able to be with someone who, for spiritual purposes, human purposes, creative purposes, we got each other. I understand who you are, what your motivations are, what makes you excited, makes you mad. All those things that we've been able to take the time to continue to dig into what that means on all those different levels.
Mm.
Um, so I would say that towards, well, let's say the beginning of our marriage for the most part, um, we started this process over the last few years of finishing
Mm.
like that. And
Mm.
in the space that we are now in. And no, again, it wasn't always easy, but it was still always something there that no matter how much fussing we did, when we were finished, it was like, that's dope.
Never
Like
mind.
that moment.
Never mind us being in the midst of raising a knucklehead teenager.
Listen.
You know,
No, that's a whole nother call and a whole nother training course or session that we
yes,
I got
indeed.
two.
Yes. All right, so you already know.
Oh
You
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
the part, brother. You talk about the wind and the fire, right? Well,
Mhm.
wind can either blow you away or give you a gentle breeze. Fire can either cook your food or cook you, right?
Mm.
It's all a matter of refining, contextualizing, and reining in these said energies that we work with in order for them to be useful as opposed to destructive. And that's what we're learning to do on an everyday basis. And I guarantee that today is the worst day that we will ever have in the future.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. No, that's real. I can see that even in my own personal spiritual journey. Like thinking that I was a child of Shango, but then when it came to time to find out being a child of Obatala, but then right after coming out of the room, had to go and then go see, Shango. So it was like I felt like Obatala was like, nah, we ain't putting you with all that energy and fire. That's too much. There's gonna be too much going on. So let me calm your little butt down, put some cool water on you, some cooling of that Ori, but then you can go and deal with that kind of energy. But for right now, you're not ready. But that's dope. Because I can even see that like how the alignment of that, I can see it within my own personal journey and being a child of Oya, I can see that too. How the two of them can work together, but also it's going to be a very powerful work and that work is going to always have ebbs and flows in regards to who's taking the lead because she's not a woman that you can just tame or what I'm saying, just do any kind of way. But hell, Kabiesi ain't nobody you're gonna push around either. so I'm just like, wow, that's a lot of energy right there. But that's a lot. That's a lot.
Part it can be tense, but then it can also be very balancing as well.
Right.
Um, I should actually go back to something that's actually important to the film itself as well. That 2012, he I'd come to Houston, back to Houston to be in a studio, just wanting to make music and discover. And he had this crazy amount of music at the time, right?
Mhm.
And there were some things that I would gravitate to immediately and say, "Ooh, that's it. Let me do something with that." And then sometimes I wanted to create. Um, that was a new part of our process as well because you know who it was. Not to compare ourselves to people, but it was Timberland and Missy.
Mm.
Timberland was talking about how he get in and do his thing, this and this, but when Missy showed up, she was like, "I want dot 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 right there and ink right there and da 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 da,"
Mhm.
and I was like, "That's us," But
Oh
um,
yeah.
it was learning how to articulate what
Mm.
the thing was in my head because I don't have his technical. knowledge of certain things, don't know what the thing is called, so I'm calling it the wisher wash, and he's like, what? So it was all of that.
And conversely, learning how to listen.
Mm. Yes.
To each other.
Yeah.
Now, a beautiful thing that happened in that, when people are able to check out the film, they'll hear his brother's voice that you don't see.
Mm.
His name is Erwin E.A. Thomas,
Mm.
or Baba Ifa Sanu, right?
Mm.
One of our god brothers who's extremely dope, that he showed up that day, and I'm pretty sure it was something else he was there for, you know.
Mhm.
And I think he may have heard what it was we were working on, and he said, "I got something," right?
Mm.
That was when that recording was done. That was in 2012, and I'm
Wow.
gonna say that a lot of what people will hear, this is what's been built around the song and that piece, right? So it's
Mm.
really been evolving, growing since then
Yeah.
until
Mm.
we got to now, and this is as late as what would it be, 2022, that the last pieces of different things was then being added, and finally it was done, right?
Mm. Mhm.
So we then get to the beginning of 2024, and so the story is interesting. Um, One of my goddaughters is a professor at SCAD.
Mm.
And she teaches film. She's been a filmmaker for over 20 years, and I'm extremely Nabila Lester. And Sister Nabila, I call her to say, hey, can you help me find somebody?
Mm.
Because we're thinking this needs a visual. I just didn't want to just put it out there.
Right.
Something to speak to what this song means. And so
Right.
the long story short is the person wound up being her. So she
Mm.
brought this 20 plus years of expertise and a crazy amount of resources, people, resources, and physical into a, a size of a project that I did not expect.
Mm.
You thank you, Father, there.
Yes.
I am clear after many said arts community how much it takes to make even a short film.
Right. Right.
And so for this to happen the way it happened, with the number of people who came to the table, the level of talent that
Mm.
worked on this with us was insane. And so that's
Yeah.
a huge blessing.
Oh yeah.
So over the last year, after everything was shot and done, um, it was just a matter of them getting in and doing the last production pieces to it, editing, special effects, and all this stuff. And so it leads us up to now. Now we're ready to start to put this out into the world. Now, why hasn't it just been on YouTube yet? It's simply because it something about the work. It may be even its own freedom. It wants to not be free, as in
Mm.
the sense of not be minimized, not
Mm.
be lost in the shuffle,
That's
not,
it.
you know what I mean? And so to just throw it up on YouTube, throw it up on TikTok, it's like, nope, don't do us that. And I think it's because of the nature of what it is or what it's
Mm.
representing.
Yeah.
We're being a little, what's the
I
word?
feel like it needed to be elevated and revered. It needed to be given reverence. Personally, that's what I felt because just like I said, just I'm so grateful just to be able to see the small snippet that I saw because I'm sitting there and hell, I damn near felt like I was about to fall into a possession because the energy was so profound based upon what I was feeling. And I'm sitting there just looking and quite honestly, I think one of the last times I felt an energy that strong was when I was actually in Nigeria in March, in Ilobu going through E5. And I remember the storms that came, it paralyzed me. Like I was in a trance, just looking at the power and the significance of this storm. Mind you, it's long before storm season in March too in Nigeria. And I knew it was nothing but the energy of, Voya. So it's like that brought me watching that snippet of your film brought me back to that similar space to where the energy was profound. I remember about maybe 90%, 80 to 90%, through the clip, I wrote down notes of what I felt because I'll never forget the first speech I ever gave when I started speaking. And the brother who evaluated me, he said, he started his evaluation by saying, what I seen, what I heard, and what I felt. And so as I'm watching that, I don't know how, but I guess spirit kind of whispered that into my ears for me to write down the note, because I wanted y'all to hear exactly what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt. And the three things that came to mind was the Underground Railroad, with Harriet Tubman, and then Nat Turner, and then 1804. Like those three significant moments in melanated, especially diasporic melanated people's histories, I feel like was something that it just flew right into my wavelength. Like, wow, like this is what I felt, that kind of energy, that kind of significance to what I saw in a matter, like what, a 4 or 5 minute clip, I think. So that's a profound project, and it definitely didn't deserve to just go right online, I think. And then on top of that, I was thinking when y'all was responding before too, couldn't have been meant for it to come out before now, because is it coming out on February 1st?
Actually, that is the first premiere.
So now I don't know if y'all saw this to pick this up, but this year being a 9 year, 2025, and then you're doing it on February 1st. So that's 2 plus 1, that's 3 nines. So that's triple nines right now.
Ooh,
That's
that's no, I did not know that.
man. So yeah, that's a lot of alignment,
Yep.
that's all unfolding.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely, and I appreciate that you appreciate that intentionality that we've been trying to do with it. It's part of it, for instance, for me, call it selfish or, but I want to have as many opportunities as possible to be in the room with people and their energy, their reflections, their aha moments,
Hmm.
their what does it make you think about, wonder about, inspired to do? You know what I mean? All the things. I'll try to get as much of that as possible.
Hmm.
First and foremost, that's part of my personal point
Hmm.
as an artist to know that. There's many things that I love about the way social media works, how it can help people, and especially just in light of even what's going on right now around the world.
Hmm.
But then there's something that gets taken away as an artist, and that's the connection with people and how they feel, as you said
Yes.
about the thing. Um, I want to take time with that, and that even that list these premieres are being planned in several different cities very soon.
Hmm.
And once that happens, and there are, let's just say, communities of people who have been able to, not only for themselves, but even within the energy of a group of people, to experience it and talk about it and so on, then I feel that there's a space and time that will be right to say we're going to put this up on, if you're on a Zoom or on the YouTube or whatever it is. Yes, that's cool. But until then, no, it needs a little bit of breathing room. you know.
Yeah. I agree. It needs to be nurtured, just like a newborn. It needs to be nurtured and kind of, what do you call it, swallowed and cuddled and all that stuff in order for it to kind of grow into the next phases. But it was profound. It was powerful. Excuse me. It's funny because I don't never watch these slave movies that they've come out with, because I know it's all subliminal,
I don't.
subliminal conditioning. So I never watch them, and then I know the way my mind and energy is set up. I don't want to give myself any extra fuel to not be a child of a Rumula when I'm out in public or dealing with the people who are responsible for that. So I kind of make sure I keep myself away from it. But the main reason is because it's always that agenda behind it, to kind of, I feel like they always want to remind us, like, this is who and what you are, and this is all you'll ever be. So I feel like that's why they always rinse and repeat that same, condition and content or information that they put out in regards to these slave movies. So, but what I saw in that brought me back to, being someone who is, I feel like, heavily influenced and heavily intertwined in the energy of the ancestors, and with my own personal Egungun and the collective Egungun. So seeing it from those lenses, the lenses from which I just saw, I didn't get that murky feeling of I don't know, vengeance, or what I'm saying, like that kind of, that you kind of stir something up in us, that's not, of a peaceful child of a Rumula type of energy. So I didn't get that, because I felt like the laser sharp focus on the authenticity of the experience was just so, it was so spot on for me, that I saw the beauty of who and what we are, even in those dark times of turmoil, and the situation that we were collectively and ancestrally. I saw the authenticity of who we were, the fabric of who we were during that time through the vision of what you guys portrayed with this clip. And it was profound. It really was, and I can't wait to see the whole thing because it was powerful. It really was.
I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Mhm.
It's that the director, Nabila Lester, she's a writer. And she's of course an EFI practitioner herself, and to first and foremost work with somebody, yet another somebody who gets it. And
Right.
like I could have been with the producer who was like, "So we're trying to do this jam," and I'm like, you know, I need you to
Right.
understand what we're doing. That
Right.
she understood why what was done visually had to feel like what you just described
Mhm.
versus, we're gonna put some people with some chains next to the railroad. No, like it was she respected even as a priest, anytime I said, "Ooh, that part right there, we can't do that."
Right. Right.
That was dope. Even the film, what do you call it? The person who's shooting it. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, but director of photography Blaise Heroux is also a EFI practitioner. So even the
Mm.
person behind the lens was very aware and part of the planning process. We had They was everywhere. The head choreographer is a priest of Oshun.
Yeah. Yes.
You see what I mean? So you see a trend happening here.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's important to note that being rendered a reactionary is another form of being subjugated, right?
Mm. Yes,
Uh,
sir.
at our core, our
Yes.
nature is not that of the oppressor. The
Yep.
oppressor has their own nature. We have our own nature. We cannot allow for their mess
Yeah.
to determine who and what we're going to be.
Gosh.
My wife and I, we were having a discussion the other day around strategy versus violence in the name of preserving that which you have. And
Mhm.
the notion of let me go out and get a bunch of guns to make sure that I can fight off the enemy. It's like, yeah, you could do that. That's one way you could do it. But there are masses of that. What
Mhm.
they're not masters of is thinking holistically. What they're
Mhm.
not masters of is considering karma. What they're not masters of is considering the interconnectivity of nature. That's what EFA provides us. It allows for us to see the back behind the front. And so, as EFA practitioners, as African people, we have to remember ourselves and who and what we are and not allow for what has beset us to determine who we will be. And
Mm.
so, when we're speaking of freedom and what it is you've just seen, it was written from, delivered from a decidedly ourselves lens. It
Yeah.
wasn't a reactionary piece of work. And I think, to your point, a lot of those slave movies, those slave narratives that they put out, they are intended to rehash that same sort of reactionary, see this and react to it, even if it's in your spirit, even if you don't say
Yep.
it, even if you don't shed a tear, react to it in your spirit. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. And it's like it's not reminding you of who you are. What it is it's saying that it's reminding you of who you are, but it's actually reminding you of what was done to you.
Yep.
It has no concern for who you are.
Mhm.
This piece of work has done is to speak to who we actually are. And so we're
Mhm.
glad you were able to capture that when you saw it.
Oh yeah.
A big
Yeah, and well, and what you just shared, well, both of y'all just shared, in regards to who all was a part of the team and who all was a part of the whole entire production team that put it together is evident. And I don't know, I mean, I know people who are outside of the tradition are going to feel it just as well, but I think the people who are in it, they're going to feel it on another level too, because I should say, we have already established certain sets of experiences within our own paths and journeys, individually as well as collectively and then universally based upon what we've been through, with the ceremonies and the trainings and, all the different aspects of where we are in our journeys. But anybody, I don't care who it is, if you've never heard of EFI, you're going to feel that. If you're someone of melanated descent, someone who has, African origin or, African ancestry, you're going to feel that. And hell, you ain't even got to be African. Anybody is going to feel it. But I feel like we're going to feel it on a much deeper internal introspective level than the typical person would. But it definitely is put on Front Street on full display, for the world to see.
So what I love, and that's why I was glad when we connected. You asked me about coming to talk about this.
Mhm.
especially in the context of our tradition. Um, when I said that, I'm looking forward to what those audiences say and see.
Mhm.
Um, when Asia Rainey, our knee is finished working, I told her don't get time off. Right?
I know
Here
that's
for the community, our communities, and our, will love to see what they see
yes.
because um this is it's stories within stories, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And just
Oh,
how you
yeah.
said that, just say non uh, practitioner or person who may not be quote unquote up on this and this, or even know all the words that are being said. They'll have a visceral feeling. That's one thing. But those
Mhm.
practitioners, yes, there are Easter eggs. Yes, there are things that I'm hoping you see and say, "Oh, I needed to see that. I feel that. I connect. I get that on a different level." That's exciting to me as well to see, how people connect on that side of things. I even thought about the possibility, knowing that we're going to be doing some screens virtually um, on a national level, for people to be invited. I thought about doing one specifically for EFOP practitioners.
Mm.
Um,
Yes, sir.
and to just have that conversation then from that, because I know how specific that's going to get,
Mm.
and some things that we did indeed write in and tie in both to the song and the visual and the way they connect.
Mm. I
So,
say, listen, I would love to be a part of that if I can in any way, shape, form, or fashion, even just to be in the audience because I know that's going to be a dope discussion. Like I said, just from what I saw, and that's only just off of one quick glance. So this is not me getting the chance to watch it over. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm studying film. Like this was just one quick boom, 4 or 5 minutes and boom. But it was like there was so many different elements that were impactful that like I said, it kind of had me in a bit of a trance. And I haven't felt like that since I was literally in Ilobu, and under the same um I won't say it was under the same, I feel like, impact of energy from, Oya. So it's like that's extremely powerful. And then the fact that it's called freedom, even in the elements of it that does kind of go back to the plantation or, those particular times, I still felt the essence and the elements of freedom. I felt the essence of a people who had not only the knowledge and the wherewithal and the grit and the drive, but had more than enough capabilities of creating that freedom, even under those duress or circumstances of duress, or under those being enemies behind enemy lines. Like I felt all of that was still present throughout the entire process of what I saw in the clip. And so I remember before we got started, I was asking, like, what is freedom? What does it mean? What is it about? But now that I've seen just that clip, it already gave me the answer to what this is, from a whole another level of not just understanding, but overstanding, understanding, and understanding of what this project is about. And there's so many other elements that I know were intentionally tied in. So like when I bring up the word liberation, where does that where did that fit in regards to what you wanted to put, on the screen for the people to see in regards to liberating?
well, I'm glad you asked that. I'm going to say that there's a particular line from the song that in the beginning that always makes me go back to that thought of defining liberation. Uh, it says, "Hands still tied by these ropes, but
Mm,
spirit is free."
mm,
Right? That this has been a constant since we came to this country, since we came to the diaspora. We could be here all day just listing the ways that they've tied our hands.
mhm,
And then even when the so-called freedom, you know, they were tied in black codes and this and that, something, Jim Crow is going to be another way. And now, as it continues,
mhm,
um, but my spirit is free.
mm,
That's the part you could not cage. That's the part that you could not dim and diminish and this and that. Like you can't, not us. And so this is then the beginning of the conversation, especially in the right now, especially with the generations of young people that we're seeing. It's how do we begin to define the ways in which we are aware of the freedom that exists for us, regardless of what other people do or try to do.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so it's a larger it's both the conversation of that Sankofa of where we're from and what we've been through and so on, a celebration of the survival, but then
mm,
the thriving and the expansion in the ever present inner freedom. What is that? And then how do we use that? And those so then are those kind of conversations, those are the kind of conversations I want to have with people. Is then what do
mm,
we do with that?
mm.
What have we not thought of? What do we need to tap into? What do we need to tap into in terms of even our spirituality? Like where's the shade? We ain't even using yet. You know,
Yes.
I have godchildren who they got warriors sitting in the corner and they don't know what to do with this issue and this Ogun. Come on. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like that. Um, things as simple as just the calling of your ancestors' names, right? And what happens when that's activated, like that kind of thing? That's again the shay part, but it continues to expand like that spiral of Fibonacci thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like it's more and more and more. So how can we begin to really dig into these kind of conversations for us?
Yeah.
Oh man, I love that. Listen, and everything you just said, like, and I got a question for you, Baba Correga, because this is something that I feel like only someone like you would be able to answer this question the way that I would love to hear it answered. But with that, everything you just said, like I've been working with my private community from the Ashe channel, and I've been working with daily devotion, prayers, rikis, and songs and all that, to kind of give people a system to work with. But then also, like you said, I know people who have warriors, but don't know anything about them, don't know how to appease Eshu, don't know how to appease Ogun, don't know what the tools in the pot for Ogun are for, don't know, you know what I'm saying? So it's so many different layers of, I feel like, information that we need, that we have to work on to develop ourselves in order to really, I feel like, take on the true, to put ourselves in the true vortex of energy that is ancestral reverence and Ifa Isheshe, devotion. And so I've been working on putting that together and having, private calls, and I can't wait to get deeper into it. But Baba Correga, when we were speaking earlier, you were speaking about how the conversations you and Ia was having about, like how to control our mindsets when we're posed against a threat or posed against an enemy. Being someone who myself, I've dealt with a lot of anger, I dealt with a lot of pain, I dealt with a lot of violence, and I used to fight a lot. I used to, you know what I'm saying? I used to get into a lot of fights because of that. And I didn't know it until I wrote my first book, where all that anger and pain came from. So I had to kind of peel back the layers of my life to get back to my childhood to really see where the source of pain came from, that kind of fueled that fire and that rage and that, anger that I had within. So now growing into this spiritual system and growing into, being a child of Obatala, being a child of Orunmila, but also being someone who is in alignment with Shango, you being a child of Shango, but also being a child of Orunmila, how do you see the ability for us as men, Black men in particularly, to be able to know, kind of like that song, you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. What is the determination factor of knowing when to go Kabiesi with the lightning bolt, you know what I'm saying, energy when needed, if needed, but also knowing that it's probably going to be a lot more beneficial to develop the patience of being a child of Orunmila? How do you determine which route to go, and like, has there ever been an internal struggle for you knowing to either go to one side with the Shango energy or knowing to go to the child of Orunmila energy, in regards to being able to be somebody who has a foresight to see that if I do go this way and get destructive, this is what's going to happen, to kind of, you know what I'm saying, like what you guys were talking about earlier? Like how would you share that type of I would just say, I guess, crossroads moment for like young Black males or young brothers out there, today?
Gotcha. Well, to answer the last question, hell yeah. It's been absolutely difficult many, many times in my life. And I think, well, the first thing that I would say to that is that Shango is the one who has the lightning bolt, yes. Shango is also a master of strategy.
Yes, sir.
And, there are polarities in every energy that we work with. being able to tap into that more deliberative aspect of Shango, being able to tap into that more regal and refined and gathered up aspect of Shango. And when it is time to strike, striking with proper accuracy and with a holistic thought, I think is key. Now I'm waxing philosophical. Let me get into a more kind of practical aspect of what that looks like. Got our young brothers in the streets right now, and I hate to sound like any other old man with a bunch of gray hair on his face, but I remember back in my day, you just fight in the street, and you weren't trying to kill everybody every time they look at you the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. And I walk both ways uphill, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, there is a certain lack of holistic consideration of one's actions that has beset us as a people. And so we're looking at how we feel in the moment. And people operate this knee-jerk reaction, it's not responding, it's reacting. It's not based on the mammalian complex, it's based on the reptilian complex. It's out of this just, I'm doing it out of because this is just what niggas do, etc. As opposed to, hey, let me consider all of the angles before I make a move. Let me be more strategic. And so I think it's absolutely paramount that we see ourselves through that lens of strategic planning. So many of our brothers also don't understand just what it means to be a God in the flesh. Just a moment ago, this quote that I came across, it was, one's theology affects one's psychology. One's psychology affects one's sociology. And, when I consider that quote, what that tells me is that what we're doing right now as IFA practitioners in the diaspora is a very defined activity of liberation, right? What we're doing right now, we're liberating ourselves because we're considering ourselves through the lens of a divinity that looks like, loves, nurtures, and affirms us in our humanity, affirms us in our power to be able to make change. So many times where our brothers are failing is that they don't see themselves as being powerful or even having any agency. And so what do you do when you feel like you have no agency? What do you do when you're back against the wall and there's nothing else you can do but fight and lash out? That's what they do, not understanding that, hey, no, you actually do have agency. You can actually get a hold of these powers and move in a way that affirms you, affirms the people that are going to come after you, affirms the people who are around you in a holistic way. If we had more brothers and sisters who understood that, things would look very differently. But again, one's theology affects one's psychology affects one's sociology. And so often we have people who don't see that they have that agency. And so they're moving out of a certain desperation. And I think that liberation that we're talking about comes from us understanding that we don't have to move out of desperation, because we see ourselves in our true light. We understand ourselves to have power to form and shape. And then we do that in a deliberate manner.
What Baba said, I'm from New Orleans, and from a place that was heard about around the world probably for the first time ever, the Lower Ninth Ward, right? And the men, young boys, they're very Shango-esque. Without even knowing, the slogan was, from that 9 and I don't mind dying. And I used to add to that and say, I'm from that 9 and I don't mind dying, but I prefer to live as long as I can.
I know that's right.
And so what he's talking about, that's part of why freedom was being spoken across New Orleans, because I knew that what you're talking about, it is a way to imprison ourselves. It's within the prison of our own emotional immaturity and the ways that we react versus strategize, the ways that we burn our own houses down based on pride, and so on and so on. So yes, it's that I've seen that firsthand And it's only just beginning that those same generations that I grew up with are starting to learn the ways in which they burn their houses.
Ashe.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's real. And I think it goes back to, I
Yeah.
feel like what a lot of the plight of what freedom speaks about and speaks to and shows is the trauma. You know, I feel like it really boils down to we haven't been nurtured, you know, the way I was like the film I feel like needs to be nurtured and swaddled. And you know what I mean? Like I don't feel like we have been that. And I'm not speaking for the majority of us, but I know that there are a lot of brothers who did not receive those types of nurture. Matter of fact, y'all had Baba Shola in there. I saw him and his son, man. When I interviewed his son on here a while back, man, that was like one of the most profound interviews to this day that I've done, because for someone his age, I believe at the time he was just about to turn 24 or 25, but for someone his age to be that young, to have that deep of a deep sense of wisdom, you know, that was like poured into him, and it just exuded all over him during the conversation. Like the answers he was giving, I was like, yo, this dude's my age. I know that wouldn't be able to answer a question like that. And for him to be able to do it at half the age, it was profound. So I remember when I was up there in Atlanta a few months ago, and I remember I met Baba Shola at the Oshun festival they had at his shop. I had to like commend him on being a man, like how phenomenal of a job he did raising his son, because as a father, that impressed me to the point where I was like, yo, if I ever get a chance to meet his father, I'm gonna shake his hand and tell him he did a hell of a job, because I never seen a young man or a young king that was that polished and that just far beyond his time, you know, in regards to the way his mentality and his mind was set up. But he said that came from unconditional love. He was like, my parents, you know, they showed me a lot of love, and they taught me, you know, from the time I was born, you know, to be who and what I am. And I was like, yeah, that's dope. But
It's
unfortunately, there's so many more of us who don't have that. You know what I'm saying? So he's the shining light of what we could and should be, but there's so many of us who don't have that, and you know, don't have that access. So what I'm seeing with freedom is inspiring me to see and feel that this could be a catalyst or a spark that can kind of get not only, you know, the people who see this, but you know, hopefully a lot of other people to kind of really pay attention to what it's going to take for us to really be able to create this path of freedom. And I feel like healing is a number one component in which I think this film could be a catalyst for that, because it comes back to love. And what Baba Craig was saying just now is like, what I gathered from your answer was that a lot of us don't know how to love ourselves, and we don't know how to love ourselves. So therefore, we don't know how to see another king or another black man and look at them and have that same love, because we don't even know how to have it for ourselves. So we got to learn how to love ourselves in order to learn how to respect and honor another brother who we should see as a reflection of ourselves versus being an enemy of ourselves. And I think that's how we can kind of start to tear away from all the lower ninth mentality that a lot of our young kings are walking around with. And I think this project, it should have a lot of influence on us starting the process to do that, because that's
correct. And I'll say this, that whether those boys in the ninth ward or the people who are not the EFI practitioners, who, let's just say maybe they never heard of Shola or his son or this and that, or us or you, or will even watch this podcast, even as a poet, both of us are poets, right? That what I've learned over the years is all of this, whether it be certain kinds of arts, spiritual systems, this and that, we can operate in bubbles. And we start preaching to the choir. We start performing for the choir, right? And the only people who see these things, who experience these art pieces, or learn about this young man and this shining example, are the very people who kind of already know that. And so part of this was even saying, how do we create this in a way that gives access, even speaks in a language that is accessible, and in a story, in a way that even, playing to the real part that, yes, people are visual learners now, and this is how they connect. It's all of those things to bring people to a singular but expansive and diverse message, and say, what conversation sparked from this. So for every premiere that we do, every showing that we do, it's meant to get into communities and get people talking. It's the simple part. That's what art is always supposed to do, is to spark thought, right? So, we're looking forward to this one that we're doing on the 1st, and thank you for that understanding of what kind of day we're doing it on.
Oh yeah.
we're looking for at least one other venue here in Atlanta. We'll be in New Orleans, we'll be in New York, Mississippi, possibly Texas. So we're going to be moving around and just hoping to do just that, to find out what it is that they're thinking, how they are defining freedom now, both in their skin and in their generations and so on. What are they still struggling with? Who's helping them to struggle with it? And what do you need? And to and sometimes I know this for sure, is to have other people hear them speak the answers to those questions that can start, oh, I didn't know I need to get up and do that.
And it's having conversations about the right questions, right? So oftentimes when there are forums, when there are opportunities for conversation around these sort of very large ideas like freedom or liberation or God, right? Often the questions that are asked are really red herrings. They're to lead you down some path that really doesn't lead you to anything substantive. The questions that we're asking right now are really a matter of, all right, what next? We know what's happening. The analysis has been exhaustive, exhausting at that. So it's like, all right, yes, we understand it. Given the context of that history, given the context of that analysis, what do we as African people who are still alive and alive against all odds, mind you, like, for all intents and purposes, we should not be here to have this conversation. According to the designs of this system and the way that they set things up, we should not be here. But here we are. Not only are we still here alive, but we're here as African traditionalists in America. So, okay, here we are with this very unlikely set of events. So the questions that we need to be asking today are questions of where do we go next, given our divine position that we're in now.
Is that really hope? Is that we're not, as they say, playing to one audience? I used to jokingly say in my head, I wanted to do an event called something like Locks and Lace Fronts. I'm saying bring everybody to the table because they're going to be common threads.
Yeah.
We all got ancestors. I don't care who you are. You know what I mean?
Nah, we need that. And listen, it's some locks and lace fronts in all of us. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. You could be Rudy Huxtable Jr. or whatever, but you still got some locks and lace fronts in you from that ancestral line. Wow.
So that's what it is, man. And so I'm glad that we didn't come on and talk too much about the details of like what's in it, because I do want people to experience that for the first time. I wanted them to know what the heart of it was, creation. So I'm really appreciative, of having this time to just, introduce the project in this kind of way. I hope even that the people in our tradition, again, that conversation about what do you see in it, it's a particular conversation, and when we get to it, I'm excited about it because we didn't all start from, speeds in this pot. Where were we before that? And for me, what are the traumas that we are then bringing into this tradition? So,
I say, that's powerful. No, I appreciate y'all taking the time, to stop and have a conversation, and also to giving me the opportunity, to be one of the first people to see it, before it's released, man. That I was very impressed. Like I was like, yo, this is dope. And like I said, it really went down to those three elements of what I seen, what I heard, and what I felt, and all of it was powerful. It was profound. So I give thanks for the opportunity, to see it and to have the opportunity to talk about it and have the conversation with you guys before it comes out, because it was powerful, man. And I know we're short on time, but if there's anything else that y'all want to leave, with the tribe before we wrap it up, the floor is yours. And I definitely give thanks, for both of you taking the time to join us and share this powerful project. I can't wait for it, for it to come out for the public and for the people to see it too.
More than anything, it's the people that I give thanks for, because as I said when I was talking about the process of getting this to being born, it was a testament to something.
Mm.
It's how when we can come to the table with no more than just a desire to see something be born, to see something, an idea be fleshed out, expanded, colorized. That it meant something to me very heavily that was the thing. Because part of this process was the support was one thing in the beginning. It was, oh, we'll make this a class project and this and that. Okay. But then people heard it. And this is before it was created. If they heard it and said, oh no, we on board.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
As an artist, as a priest, as a mother, that meant something. And it just was more of a reminder than anything else of all of the other things that we're capable of when we figure out how to trust each other's processes.
Mm.
You know?
That's true.
Um, figure out the ways that we work together. No, it's not always going to be perfect. Communication isn't always right. This, that. Okay. But it's just like an actual baby. But this baby is coming though. And
Yeah.
here's a trick: is can we get them there healthy, and then can we raise them right? Right.
Right.
That's the part that I hope this is also a beacon for. Is well, if they were able to do that, then what can we create?
Mm.
We decide we're going to come to the table and do that and create more conversations and more growth and more learning. That's the point.
And more
Mm.
definitive action at that. I
Yes.
sit there and ruminate on this topic of I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. We've all seen the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I know who wrote the quote.
Yeah.
But go on.
But I sit with that as a notion, and I say to myself, would my ancestors want me to be in the same position that they were in?
Mm.
Right? And I know that, so many things that currently beset us as a people is nowhere near being our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Mm.
Those of us who have a communion, an active communion with our ancestors, have to be the purveyors of the forward movement towards becoming just that. Our ancestors' wildest dreams is that we become ourselves in full once again, that we become a restored people. And this is part and parcel of that mission. That larger mission is what freedom, in its comparatively small way, right? But in its way, in its defined way, is intended to address. It's us becoming ourselves again so we can indeed become our ancestors' wildest.
Because listen, I'm so glad you said it like that because to put it in the context, I'll say this. My grandmother's wildest dream might have been that one day I had a 24-inch TV.
Mm. Yeah.
Might have
Yeah.
been that maybe I can get this Buick, a brand new
Yes.
Cadillac,
Yeah.
and so
Yes.
I'm saying just she could dream in the colors that she was familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And that the understanding that we then get about Echoing is that that they leave those trappings alone and they begin to see us in a different way. But here's the trick. When the sister wrote that, I think some folks got that twisted. It was, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams, and I'm the one that sometimes have to figure out what those dreams really are.
They
I
may
have
not
to
know.
listen. That
Yes.
that's an expansion of and should be an expansion,
Shit.
Yes, sir.
right? Because the descendants, we have a job too. That
Mm.
Eric said to one of my godchildren that, this is another podcast, episode 2. But when you talk about Iwa Puele, I would ask them the question, well, why do we do it? Why even be a good person? Christians say,
Mm.
well, so you got a motivation over there because I don't want to go to
Mhm.
hell. What's our motivation?
Ain't no
To
hell.
have, we don't have,
Right.
right? So if I hell, I don't know where it's at, but we gotta have this good character. Why? And I said to him that one day we're gonna be ancestors, and we're gonna want to return to a life within this line that is prosperous, that
Mm.
is abundant and all that, but also that they're a better person than Uncle Joe used to be.
Yes.
That we're not making the same mistakes we made back in 2020, and so
Yes.
on, so on, and so on. So I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams, but I'm also my descendants' wish.
Shit.
So it's
Yeah.
it's moving forward,
Yeah.
thinking about those things really, and saying that yes, we learn who they are, so we learn who we can be.
That's it. I think Ephah Hill is in Idaho.
Shut up.
Oh,
See, we made it almost through the podcast before I told him to be quiet.
Look, I can edit it out, but I think it'd be realer if I keep it in.
shouts out to Idaho.
Oh man, nah, that was dope. I loved it, man. We definitely got to do it again. And Baba Karega, I would love, if you can connect us, man. I would love to, if the schedule allows and time permits, I'd love to have some more conversation with you as well, Baba, because I think there's a lot of topics about us as men that I really want to address. And I feel like, it's a certain energy that I like to build with when I'm doing that, because, it's going to probably ruffle some feathers and step on some toes. But at the end of the day, I look at it, in order for us to get to be the infant, or even just a small fraction of what becoming our ancestors' wildest dreams, there's a lot of work that we have to do, and I feel like it starts within. So I feel like, me personally, it's about normalizing being able to love and appreciate another brother and not be jealous or hating, or, have any type of friction or low vibrational frequency energy amongst us, because united we stand, divided we fall. But it takes us to be the creme de la creme, to make sure that we saluting and supporting other brothers, to let him know that he is him, and that just because he's him doesn't diminish me being him too, you know what I mean? Like being that guy too. And I think it's so much work that needs to be done with us, as a people, on that level of getting past, those different layers of, I feel like it's trauma, hurt and pain, but it's a lot of work that we need to do, to kind of get us to the next level with that. So I appreciate y'all.
Definitely connect, y'all. I think you'll have some amazing conversations. Once y'all talk off to the side, I'll let him run down even some of where he's been, and that's it. A brain and a heart.
I'm looking forward to it. That's what's up. So do you want to leave like any additional details or information, for the people to be able to kind of look into, connecting with you and with the project?
I will say, if you're doing the whole social media stuff, of course, follow me, because some of the announcements are actually, maybe even by the time this podcast is up, will be being made about where some of those locations for the premieres will be, as well as upcoming information about some of those online opportunities to be inside of the communities that can see it. So Instagram is Asia_Rainey, RAINEY_Ani, ANI.
Non-fiction media too.
Oh yes, and then of course our company, one of them, that deals with so much of the publishing and the production of these kind of things, is 9 Pages Media on Instagram. It's the number 9 Pages Media, and so you can absolutely check out more about what we do along those lines with Black Cheese.
As for me, you got the Instagram thing with Karega Ani. That's KAREGAANI. I think I'm the only one in the world. So check me out there. Also, the Ani collection jewelry. So I make jewelry. Some of which my lovely wife will be showing off. She showed it off in the video. A lot of everything that you're seeing around the wrist and everything I created. So, if you want to partake in that, I do take custom orders. The Ani collection jewelry, that's on Instagram as well. So there's a lot.
That's what's up. We definitely got to do it again for sure. I look forward to it. And hopefully I can make it up there for the premiere too, because I definitely know it's gonna be dope, man.
It's a short film, and so that's the event. Yeah, the event itself will be about an hour and a half. But if you're intending to come for February 1st, please let me know, because the event itself is actually already sold out.
I saw that. That's funny, because I was telling my wife about, like, they invited us to the premiere, and then I sent her the link. She's like, "Oh, that thing sold out." I said, "Oh shit." So
there may be one ticket sneaking around. My goddaughter put some to the side just in case. So if you are, though, just let me know.
Okay, no problem. Absolutely. But yeah, I definitely appreciate it. And if there's anything I can do, to help to just push it out there, or, share it, or whatever y'all want me to do, let me know. And I look forward to not just doing that, but hopefully collaborating again in the future, to do something with it, as well as any other podcasts, episodes, or any topics y'all want to come on and chop it up with. I'm always welcome and, ready to make it happen.
Love it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that was another episode of the African Spirituality Experience. We were blessed with the both the Kabiesi, Shango, and Oya energy and presence and essence today in these Ashe streets. So I come to y'all to give thanks again, man. I appreciate it, Modupwe. And for the tribe, don't forget to please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all on the next episode. We are out. Peace. Asheo Dabo.
Ẹni tó gbàgbé ilé ṣàpò ìyàgbọ́ tẹ́ǹtì ẹni takísà ní tàtàn ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ ẹja lọ pé eégún mo ṣe nígbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́ forsake not your ancestors and praise your.